Okay, so this is kind of an interesting angle on this sky jump. I've got the playfield up in maintenance mode right now. Those are the 3 pop bumpers. The farthest one away is the left-hand pop bumper. And what happens is if that pop bumper is actuated, it stays locked on. Now, this playfield was missing the left pop bumper coil when I got it. Probably burned up because look what happens. See how that thing locks on. So I was thinking that I probably had a switch problem, a shorted switch or something, that when it actuated, it wasn't opening up. But if you watch carefully, remember on these Gottliebs, the left and right pop bumpers are tied together. So if I try the right-hand pop bumper, watch what happens. The right pop bumper does not actuate all the way. The left one does, and it stays down. All right, so I think the problem is because, I'll show you on the schematic, the left and right pop bumpers both have to open before they'll release, because they both actuate and they both release at the same time. Since this coil is not going all the way down, it never opens the end of stroke open switch on the pop bumper. This switch never opens, and they both have to open for it to work. I'll show you on a schematic, it'll make more sense. Hopefully this will show up. So right here are the right pop bumper and left pop bumper switches. Either one of these close, it's going to actuate the P relay. The normally closed switches both have to open in order for it to shut off that relay. So what's happening is, since the right pop bumper is not actuating all the way, that switch never opens, so the P relay stays on all the time, which means the pop bumper stays on all the time. So I have to figure out if I've got a bad coil or something's preventing it from actuating all the way. The good news is I've got good voltage because the left pop bumper works okay, so I suspect I got a bad coil. Okay, so I'm doing a little more troubleshooting in that coil issue, pop bumper issue I've got. This coil will not energize. I even swapped out the coil with one from the old playfield. Same thing. I thought I had a bad coil. So took a different approach here. I hooked up a voltmeter across the coil that locks on. AC volts, remember, on these old Gottliebs. This relay right here is the one that's triggered by the spoon switches. This relay right here is triggered by the spoon switches. So when I do that, I get about 27 volts AC across the coil. So now I'm going to try that across the right-hand coil, which doesn't actuate. Should have the same thing, 27 volts AC. I get nothing. So not getting any voltage to the right coil, which makes me think I've got a broken wire somewhere. So maybe I'll trace out with an ohm meter, try to figure out where the other end of this wire is, check the schematic maybe. I bet I got a bad connection. So I checked the schematic. The blue-yellow wire comes from the right pop bumper up to the P relay. That's it, just a little jump. So I ohmed it out, it's good, there's no open wire. Then I thought, well, maybe it's the ground side, the black side of the coil's bad. So I did some experimentation here, and I'm not going to bore you too much. So I did a little checking, and this top switch of the P relay, I've got 24 volts AC on the bottom of it, and it's an open switch. When I make the switch, I don't have 24 volts on top. So even though that switch ohmed out as closing, when I close it, it actually has 0 ohms. For some reason, I'm not getting voltage across that to pass on that switch. All right, so just to prove that that switch is giving me troubles, what I did is I hooked a jumper wire on the bottom of the switch, and then I'm just going to short to the top of it, which should simulate that switch closing, which should make this pop bumper activate. See how that works fine. So that's telling me I've got a bad switch here, because it'll work if I jump around it. Okay, so I cleaned this top switch. I haven't even checked it with a meter or anything. Let's see what happens. Oh, hey, it works. You can see right here, this is the right pop bumper. Watch it move. So it works great. So this is interesting. That means that switch had a bad connection. I just cleaned it. That would prevent this coil from activating, which means this one would lock on and it could never de-energize that coil. So a bad switch contact here would smoke this left coil. And it was because this one wasn't activating. So that's a good example of how if you see something locked on a playfield, don't just assume that it's the coil or there's a switch stuck somewhere. This was a case where a switch wasn't making contact. Okay, so remember the purpose of this blog and video is to teach and show through my mistakes so people don't have to make mistakes. When I was trying to clean some of these switches, I took all the screws out from the bottom of the playfield and took the whole thing off. Well, you don't have to do that. There are 2 wing nuts here and it opens up nice and easily so that you can service these switches. One thing you may notice as you go over the rollovers 1 through 7, it's supposed to light a corresponding target elsewhere in the field. So if like you hit number 7 rollover, it'll light a target. It'll say ×10 when lit. What I was seeing was when I would do some of the rollovers, a couple of the light bulbs would not turn on. And what that is whichever number of the rollover, some of these switches don't make contact, so you may have to clean them. So it's a lot easier to clean them this way than taking that whole thing off.